From the time I was a child, teachers, friends, and my family had all told me that I was meant to be a writer. I was going to pen the next great novel. I never felt that drive, which I internalized as some ineptitude within myself. Writing was the thing I was supposed to do. The truth is, though, I never truly felt at home with writing. I would force myself to write and end up disappointed when things were not crafted with smooth edges. This disconnect remained until May 2014. My dad was dying, and his plan was to keep that fact as close to himself as possible. He owned the big radio station in town, which made him the type of famous that only happens in a place like Lawrenceburg, Tennessee. He had cancer, which started in his lungs 3 years earlier and progressed steadily to his brain, kidneys, and liver. I was living in Atlanta, Georgia at the time, a mere 5.5 hours from my hometown. I hadn't seen my dad in about a month, but I just had this feeling that I should surprise him with a visit. I arrived on a Wednesday morning. Early that afternoon, I drove my dad to the emergency room. That ride was the last time we would be in the car together, usually an activity we would save for Sunday drives with Van Morrison playing softly in the background. I stayed with him every night for the following week while my mom slept. When she entered the hospital room around 7 in the morning, I would kiss my dad on the forehead and go home to sleep, always returning by noon. That is who I am in the middle of a crisis. I'm not the person who takes time to heal or process. This is without a doubt to my own detriment. The third night of the hospital stay brought just enough feeling that I wrote a blog post about it. I had an overflow of emotions that resulted in a frantic stream of consciousness style of writing that actually expressed how I felt. At the time, I attributed this surprising courage to my lack of sleep over the past 72 hours. Thoughts rushed to my head about how my dad and I could never go out to eat without a plethora of someone's interrupting us to talk about his latest achievements. His funeral was so well attended, it was standing room only. So, needless to say, when I shared a blog post on Facebook essentially telling everyone that he was dying, it got a few shares. Just as I didn't know he was dying, none of those someones did either. This sudden need for catharsis is what made my writing somewhat anticipated. May 26, 2014, I shared my blog post. This was 3 days before my dad died. This was the day that hospice came to visit. This was the day they put the Do Not Resuscitate bracelet on his right wrist. This was the day I realized that my dad, the man who talked for a living, probably would not be able to speak again. To me, this was not writing. This was my one chance to actually acknowledge my feelings. Being closed off to others is my go-to way to live, and this was only heightened during the time around my dad's passing. I have never enjoyed reflecting on my own feelings, and doing so in such a public way was foreign to me. Within the first day, I had 18 shares on Facebook and 403 views on the actual blog post. I was shocked. Calls and messages flooded my phone. Facebook groups were formed to pray for Jack Cheatwood. To this day, I'm not entirely sure why I shared it on Facebook. I'm unsure of why I continued to write on the blog for months after he died, only to abruptly stop without any explanation. I still get messages on Facebook asking me to continue writing these honest pieces, but it doesn't feel right. It feels like the blog was not simply a means to an end, but an end itself. I still write like that every now and again. I will, on occasion, furiously punch the keyboard with my rigid anger or shaking anxieties. I never publish them, and I rarely save them on my computer. I have found that I can better understand my own mind when I write this way. I don't need shares or likes to feel valid, though, through it all, the catharsis still remains.